Stocks transports us from our modern bustle to the sunlit shores of archaic Greece, where the first thinkers dared to ask, what underlies reality? With scholarly zeal, piecing together papyrus fragments, Byzantine reports, and linguistic clues, he revives Thales proclaiming water as the primal element, Anaximander envisioning the boundless, Apeiron, and Anaximenes tracing all things back to air. In this snapshot of Priae.
Welcome to Bookscape Epic Reads, where we dive deep into the world of popular books, exploring timeless classics and modern bestsellers alike. Join us for in-depth reviews, insightful discussions, reflections. Let roll.
In the opening pages of A History of Ancient Philosophy, Stocks lifts his reader out of the quotidian bustle of modern life and deposits them squarely into the vivid, brimming world of classical inquiry, where questions of what is the cosmos made of and how ought we to live were not idle curiosities but urgent life and death matters. He begins by reminding us that our knowledge of the earliest Greek thinkers comes to us in fragments, scraps of verse quoted by later authors, shadowy reports of public lectures, and a few tantalizing reports from rival schools. This fragmentary inheritance demands a historian's care and a detective's tenacity. Stocks lays out his dual method from the first, rigorous textual criticism to establish the authenticity of each fragment, and a contextual approach that seeks to situate these voices within the turbulent politics and religious rites of archaic Greece. He asks his reader to imagine the Aegean world of the 6th and 5th centuries BCE, a patchwork of independent polis, each with its own patron, God, its own rights, and its own fiercely defended notion of justice. It is into this crucible that Thales of Miletus steps, daring to suggest that water, not Zeus, lies at the root of all things. Stocks doesn't simply summarize Thales's claim as a quaint curiosity. He reconstructs the moment, the sound of lapping waves at the harbor, the salty breeze, the awe of fellow citizens as their first philosopher strips away the familiar armor of myth to reveal an underlying unity in nature. Next, Stocks turns to method. He explains how he weighs differing ancient testimonies, Diogenes Laertius's anecdotal recollections against the terse doxographies of doorkeepers like Simplicius, to decide which fragments truly came from, say, Anaximander's pen and which are later interpolations. He outlines his criteria for authenticity: internal consistency with a thinker's other surviving doctrines, concordance with archaeological and epigraphic evidence, and even stylistic markers that betray a later editor's hand. Having established his scholarly toolkit, Stocks step by step builds the scaffolding for the entire work. He maps out a chronological spine, tracing each school in sequence, but he also teases out thematic threads, the quest for a principle of unity, the perennial tension between flux and permanence, and the gradual shift from cosmological speculation to ethical and political inquiry. He makes clear that this narrative is not merely a succession of doctrines, but a drama of ideas, in which each new philosopher both inherits and challenges the legacy of predecessors. Finally, in a tone that blends academic precision with genuine wonder, Stocks invites the reader to consider why these ancient thinkers still speak to us across 25 centuries. What light do their bold speculations shed on our own scientific and moral dilemmas? By weaving scholarly rigor with storytelling flair, Stocks ensures that the reader is not just informed but captivated, primed and ready to embark on the long, luminous journey through the ancient mind. In the vast dawn of Greek thought, before the grand dialogues of Plato or the sweeping systems of Aristotle, there lay a rugged intellectual landscape, untamed, raw, and profoundly alive. Stocks invites us to stand at the edge of this wilderness in his first section on the pre-Socratics, where the very impulse to question is itself revolutionary. Imagine dusty hilltops and salt-baked shores, temple fires flickering against the deep blue of the Aegean, and young minds stirring with restless curiosity. These are the settings in which the earliest philosophers tore away the comforts of myth and dared to ask, what is the first principle of all things? Stocks begins by showing us how our picture of these pioneers is necessarily incomplete. We possess no full treatises, only fragments, snatches of verse attributed to Thales, terse reports on Anaximander's boundless, and second-hand summaries of Heraclitus's enigmatic utterances. Yet, rather than seeing these lacunae as mere frustration, Stocks treats them as an invitation to creative reconstruction. He takes us into the meticulous world of the scholar's study, the careful collation of papyrus scraps, the comparison of Byzantine manuscripts, and the weighing of each external testimony. Here, the historian becomes a detective, piecing together the voices of thinkers who never wrote for posterity, but spoke for the sheer thrill of insight. From this methodological prologue, we embark on our chronological journey. First come the Milesians, Thales, Anaximander, and Anaximenes, three figures from a bustling Ionian trading hub, whose minds were shaped by the confluence of ships, merchants, and foreign ideas. Stocks draws a vivid portrait of Thales stepping down from his modest workshop, sweeping aside the applause for Zeus, and positing instead that water underlies every form: rock, plant, animal, even the fire that warmed his own hearth. With equal vividness, he conjures Anaximander standing on a cliff's edge, gazing over the sea, and proposing the apeiron, the boundless, as the source of order and change, a principle too vast to be any familiar element. And then Anaximenes, who watched the mist roll in from the black earth and discerned that air, condensed or rarefied, could account for all material diversity. But it is in the next wave of thinkers that the drama deepens. Stocks guides us into the world of flux and permanence, where Heraclitus flickers in and out of focus like a flame in the wind. No man ever steps in the same river twice, he writes, and Stocks shows us how this startling image captures a cosmic dance of ceaseless change. He reconstructs Heraclitus's lectures in the Athenian Agora, where merchants and citizens paused in their bargaining to hear of the Logos, a rational, underlying unity that governs the world, even as it flows, inexorably onward. Then comes the counterpoint of Parmenides, whose voice emerges dense and immovable, like the marble foundations of a temple. Stocks immerses us in the strange, poem-like proem of Parmenides' soul-surviving work, in which a chariot-born goddess guides the young philosopher to a vision of being itself, unchanging, indivisible, timeless. Here is an absolute rejection of the sensory world's illusions, a stance that would reverberate through centuries of metaphysical debate. Yet Stocks does not leave us there in stark dualities. He escorts us to the reconciliatory visions of Empedocles and Anaxagoras, each striving to bridge the gap between permanence and flux. In Empedocles' cosmology, we learn 4 eternal elements: earth, air, fire, water, are woven together and torn apart by the twin forces of love and strife, giving rise to the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. In contrast, Anaxagoras introduces new, a cosmic mind that orders the infinite seeds of existence into the ordered forms we perceive. Stocks paints these thinkers not as isolated eccentrics, but as colleagues in a grand conversation, each responding to the puzzles left by their predecessors, and each laying groundwork for the ethical and political inquiries that will soon follow. Throughout this opening section, Stocks' narrative is both panoramic and intimate. Panoramic in its sweep across centuries and themes, intimate in its attention to the textures of place, the cadence of ancient speech, and the electrifying moment when a human being first dares to look beyond myth and glimpse the hidden architecture of reality. By the end of these pages, we are no longer mere observers, but fellow travelers, awed by the courage of minds that redefined what it meant to think, and eager for the next chapters, where the focus will shift from the cosmos to the very heart of human life.
Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe.